obviously we're in a very weird position in the NBA right now where, LeBron, Steph, Kevin Durant are all at the end of their careers. It's pretty much likely that they're all done before the decade turns. The question is, who's going to replace them as the face of the league? And there's a lot of options. There's so many young stars, from Wemby to Luka to Tatum to whoever. There's so many different guys. And Gio showed me, I think a week ago, some comments made by Stephen A. Smith and ESPN regarding the face of the league. And we're going to let Gio get into that right now.
I have the quote if you don't know.
I don't have the direct quote.
You can paraphrase. I don't really care because I'll put it on the screen regardless.
Anthony will say it for us.
So Stephen A. said on First Take that I know they're global figures. Their popularity extends globally, meaning the global NBA players.
Yeah.
But the NBA is an American-born sport, and it needs to resonate in America. And if it doesn't resonate in America, then it's not going to matter to America how you resonate beyond.
Wow.
That's wild.
Wow.
Stephen A. has a glorified kind of speaking tone, and I could see him saying this.
Can you mimic how he talks when you say that quote, please?
No.
What was the quote? He was like,
What?
What was the quote he said? He was like, he needs to resonate with Americans.
Yes.
He talks with emphasis.
Exactly. Oh, and he said, I don't believe an international player can be the face of the NBA.
He's like, I don't see it.
That's how he said it?
Yeah.
That's basically how he talks.
That is so funny.
But Stephen A. has a bias with this. So
What is his bias?
Yeah. Xenophobia.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes.
You would call Stephen A. as xenophobia?
I would call ESPN xenophobic.
Interesting.
It is egregiously nasty.
Interesting.
Absolutely nasty work. And this, no surprise. We saw Stephen A. last year get canceled for saying that Ohtani couldn't be the face of the MLB because he couldn't speak English. He needed a translator.
Oh my God, that was one of the worst moments.
So we're back to square one, I guess. Like,
Ohtani is
I wouldn't call that xenophobic. I mean, I think there's a basis for why he's saying that, and I don't think it's xenophobia. I think he's saying that because American viewers are going to be more engaged in the sport if the best player can speak the language of American viewers.
Can I give you a prime example?
Absolutely.
Lionel Messi is the face of the MLS, and bro does not know a lick of English.
That's different, though.
Doesn't
That's
matter.
A completely different thing.
Shohei-
He's a legend, bro.
Bro, in 20 years, Shohei Ohtani could be like the best ever.
Right.
So it's plausible to put the two.
But soccer's a completely different sport. MLB is baseball. The MLB is an American sport. Soccer is an international sport. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a completely different.
Baseball's international.
Baseball is and everything.
Yeah, I understand. Baseball is absolutely international, but it's the MLB. That's the league. When it comes to soccer, the MLS is not the league. And so if you get a player that played in other leagues that were the league into your league, and he's the best player in those leagues, it's completely different.
I don't think they have a problem with that. Messi being
right. Well, he's Messi, but the reason Messi's like one of the greatest athletes ever.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
The reason why I say that Stephen A. is xenophobic is we have a sample size. We have a beautiful pattern of the last 5 years of Stephen A. being xenophobic towards Nikola Jokic.
I knew you were going to say
He's
that.
never voted for him once.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Because basically the way Stephen A. does it is it's always like, did you not see last year? We even saw Nick Young do this on Gil's Arena where he's like, why are we just talking about Jokic, like Jokic this, Jokic that? Who do you think was the one person he was propping up for MVP?
Embiid.
Jason Tatum.
Tatum.
Stephen A. Smith last year. Who is he propping up for the entirety before he switched up to SGA last minute?
Tatum.
Jason Tatum. So he goes for the Americans first.
Yes.
And then if there's no Americans in the picture, it becomes a race bait. And that's exactly what he does.
Well, this is interesting because before I say my point, I'm going to say this.
Yeah.
Correlation doesn't always equal causation. Okay? So now, with that disclaimer in mind, here's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
The NBA and its viewership has dropped significantly ever since players like Jokic, players like Luka, players like SGA have become the face of the league. Right? These are international players.
Yeah.
Ever since then, the NBA views have dropped pretty significantly.
Right.
So, but when you have an American player, LeBron James, Steph Curry, Michael Jordan even, right? If you have these top-tier American players that are the face of the league, the NBA's viewership is outstanding.
I have a perfect counterpoint to this.
Go for it.
What's in common with those guys? They
And
play
with which guys?
with LeBron, Steph, Michael Jordan. What do they all have in common?
Tell me.
They play in big markets.
Okay.
We are in. This is my biggest issue with the NBA. What is the point of these small market teams existing? Like, that's the NBA's fault. Nikola Jokic is going to retire as one of the greatest players of all time. Victor Wembanyama could be the greatest player of all time. We don't know. They play in Denver, Colorado, and San Antonio, Texas. They don't market those teams well at all. They don't. They don't. SGA is having one of the best statistical seasons from a guard. He plays in Oklahoma City. They don't care what's going on in Oklahoma.
Well, I disagree with that because when Russell Westbrook and KD were in Oklahoma, the league cared about what was going on in Oklahoma.
Because they're Americans.
Exactly my
That's
point.
the problem. And that's where there's a divide between the media and the public.
No, I disagree. Maybe there's something to what I'm not saying be xenophobic. That's absolutely not what I'm saying.
Right. No, I'm not talking about that. But ESPN doesn't want to market international players.
Which is interesting.
And that to me, that's a problem in itself because 4 out of the 5 best players in the league right now are international.
Interesting.
And none of them play in big markets. Jokic plays in
Luka does now.
Well, Luka does now, but Luka kind of did in Dallas, but outside of a sheer miracle, Luka's in Dallas now. But Giannis plays in Wisconsin, Jokic plays in Colorado, and SGA plays in Oklahoma.
Yep.
And even looking outside of that, some of the other good international player like
Wemby plays in San
Wemby.
Antonio.
Wemby plays in San Antonio.
Yep.
Who are some other good examples that I'm trying to think of off the top of my head that I can't right now?
Players.
Like even looking at some of the up and coming guys, like Paulo and Franz, even though Paulo's American, they play in Orlando. Like they're not really getting the spotlight put on them.
Yeah.
And to me, that's a problem. It's all about New York, Boston, Los Angeles, and Chicago. But Chicago's not good anymore, so you kind of default that to just San Francisco with the Warriors. So that's where it's at.
That's an interesting point because you said ESPN is not marketing
Well, the NBA
international players.
The NBA's not either. The ESPN is just
Why
not
is
giving them the
this?
coverage because they don't. They again, Stephen A. Smith believes that the international players don't resonate with Americans when that's false. Like I resonate with a lot of the international players. Because they're the guys that are always coming up from nothing and getting counted out and everything like
So
that.
do you think it's a Stephen A. driven thing,
I don't think it's just Stephen A.
or is it ESPN and Stephen
It's-
A. just a part of it,
it's-
or is it the NBA at large?
It's media. It's all media.
Media.
Yeah.
I'm talking ESPN. I'm talking Fox Sports. I'm talking Gilbert Arenas. I'm talking really just any former player too. A lot of these guys, like outside of, there's been very few. Like Kevin Garnett loves the international players.
Okay.
Mike Miller and Udonis Haslam love the international players. So it really just depends. But they don't market well at all, regardless of whether it's international or small market teams. Like the ESPN coverage of Game 7 for the Knicks and Pacers was disgusting. Like it was like watching MSG. And it was the same thing when the Nuggets played the Lakers in the playoffs 2 years ago in the conference finals. Like they barely talked about the Nuggets at all.
Yeah.
When Nikola Jokic was averaging a 35-point triple-double.
Yeah.
Like why do we not talk about that?
Wow.
That's the issue.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I'll get to the other end of the problem, is that because they prop up so many American stars, this is why a guy like Jason Tatum is so overhated. Because he's put
Interesting
on this
point.
ridiculous pedestal. But Jason Tatum is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He'll retire like a top 40, top 30 player of all time. But everyone, like there was a Twitter post filling in a box of like good player loved by fans, bad player loved by fans. He went in average player divided by fans. Jason Tatum is not an average player.
Yeah.
And the xenophobia in NBA media affects the American players in a negative way.
Yeah.
And that's something we're not really taking into account as much.
Yeah.
It's so counterintuitive to what the NBA stands for, though, because the NBA is supposed to be known as this international basketball league where they're trying to expand to international countries, right? This is what they're trying to do. But at the same time, they're not matching what they're preaching. They're not doing what they're saying.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's so weird.
And we saw the switch up in 2019. Everyone wanted the Warriors to lose. And when they realized who they lost to, everyone got pissed because it wasn't an American team.
Yeah. I don't know what's up. I really want to get to the bottom of this. Like, what's going on? Why is it like this? Why are they not marketing international players in the most effective way? What's up with that? I really want to get to the bottom of this.
We have to ask ESPN.
Well, it's not. It's you have to ask Adam Silver.
Adam Silver.
Yeah.
You have to ask Adam Silver. But
Is it something that's intentional, or
They
is it
won't. They
something
won't
that's
ask
not?
him that though.
they're clinging on to LeBron, KD, and Steph for dear life. Like they are white knuckling it. Like they have such a death grip on the three of them.
So you don't think it's intentional? They're not intentionally not marketing international players.
They are intentionally not marketing them.
Yeah.
But when those three
But the
guys,
motive is because, or the reason is because they're hanging on to these
I think it's both.
former players.
both.
Okay, it's both.
Yeah, because
Okay.
I mean, like even the American stars on small market teams aren't getting the love they deserve. So it's like it's hard to gauge. Like when they talk about a guy like Cade Cunningham, or they talk about a guy like Trey Young, or they talk about a guy like not Alperen Şengün. What's his face?
What team?
I'm blanking right now. Hold on, it's coming back to me. I forgot who it was, but it doesn't really matter. It's not important right now. Or Anthony Edwards, that was who it was. When they talk about those guys, they don't talk about them. They talk about getting them to a big market. And that's what they do. They were talking on NBA Counted, they were talking about Giannis going to New York. Like, what are we doing? Like, who cares? Like, Giannis is the best buck of all time. Like,
Well,
Yeah.
maybe what they're doing is that's good for marketing. If you get this international player to play for a big market, that's
Right.
good for the NBA.
they want that, but like
Yes.
if you're the Bucks, you're like, well, fuck me, I guess. Like,
Yes.
what's the point?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point of us winning a championship if everyone's just gonna bash it?
Yeah, and it doesn't help that the ESPN is pro LA and pro New York media because
That's-
of,
yeah,
of their,
the other
of their players. I mean, not players.
It's always going to be like
Talent.
It's not
Stephen A. is the big culprit in that.
But it's not even just New York and LA, because we saw when the Nets and Clippers had contending teams, they barely were talked about.
Right.
It's all about the Knicks and the Lakers.
Yeah, it's just those teams.
And if you notice too, like the NBA, the ESPN's based on either end of the country. They're
Yep.
in LA, they're in New York, and they're in Bristol, Connecticut.
Yep.
And everyone that works for them also works for the
That's
Lakers
hilarious.
and the Knicks.
Well, there you go.
So we literally saw on, I think in Game 7 and on Get Up the next morning, they had Alan Hahn, they had Monica McNutt, they had Mike Breen on the call. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
So that's why it was karma. It was good karma that Indiana won that game.